Afternoon. You're listening to My Conscious Dad on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. I am your host, Jasmine Urbina, here in the studio with my dad and co-host, Alex Urbina, and today we are talking about emotional honesty. So first I want to ask, what does that mean?
You know, for me, emotional honesty is being able to express your true feelings. And I think that for most people, and you know, you gotta remember, I coach probably a couple dozen people a week, personally and professionally. And when it comes to relationships, what I've noticed is 80 to 90% of the people that I work with seem to struggle with the ability to be honest about what they're truly feeling. And that seems to be what gets in the way of them communicating effectively to the people that they say they love the most. And a lot of times we don't realize that we're not being honest. We don't realize that we're not feeling our feelings and being honest enough to experience them as well as share them with other people. Now, if I'm showing up in a certain way, and if all of a sudden I was able to notice that I'm not getting the responses that I want from you, and it's because I'm not truly communicating with you in an honest way, if I'm not honestly telling you what's coming up for me, then what's the benefit of me holding all that back? All I'm doing is paying a price because I'm keeping you in the dark. But if I was willing to look and notice that I'm not being honest with my feelings, and if I were able to tap into that and share that openly and honestly with you, you might now have a different perspective of me. You might now feel compassionate towards me, or it might shift your listening towards me, or it might open you up in ways that I didn't realize was possible.
Yeah, and I'm sure with everyone, they have their different reasons why they're not, honest with their feelings. I know I'm very much like that sometimes, and I guess I've never really thought about it until right now. So I'm wondering, why are we like that, or why am I like that?
Let's first talk about some of the benefits, because I want to really break down why is it important before we look at what's some of the dysfunctions that we have that get in the way. And what I'll do is I'll kind of throw these at you, and I want you to tell me what you're hearing, or let's open up a discussion. So I think the very first benefit that we can get out of giving ourselves permission to be honest about how we feel is that it gives other people the opportunity to feel safe around me or around each other. What do you think I mean by that when I say it allows people to feel safe around you when you're being honest?
I guess when it's kind of like if I am being honest and vulnerable or emotional, it allows other people to do it. Like, I notice that sometimes if I cry about something, it lets my friends or my sister or my parents or whoever I'm talking to, it lets them break down their walls, and they start crying too, and they become emotionally invested in whatever it is we're talking about.
That's awesome. I like that you said it. I like that you pointed out that there's possibly a wall there, and I want you to visualize two human beings that have emotional walls up, that's keeping each other at bay, not letting the other person in, not letting the other person see what's really coming up for you, or what you're feeling, or the fear that you might be experiencing, or the doubt you might be experiencing for yourself. If you have that emotional wall up, the other person can't see that, they can't feel it. But the minute you let that wall come down, all of a sudden people feel safe around you. Here's another benefit: people trust you more. Why do you think people trust you more when you're being honest about your feelings?
I think people can tell when you're being honest, and they can tell when you're holding something back. So if they have a 99% experience of you being honest, or feeling like the answers they're getting, their experience that they're feeling is authentic, then they naturally just begin to trust you.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of like if you're holding something back, and I sense you're holding something back, and you continue to hold it back, it's almost like, all right, there's something that's still getting in the way, so I'm not fully wholeheartedly trusting you that I can reveal myself, because I know you're unconsciously holding something back too. But the minute all of a sudden you bring your wall down, and then you expose yourself, and you allow yourself to be vulnerable, and then share some of what's going on with you or what you're feeling, all of a sudden I instantly trust you now. It's like, all right, if you're gonna trust me with your heart, or if you're gonna trust me with your feelings or your emotions, it's almost like a sacred space now. And so now I instantly trust you with my experiences as well. The other thing is that one of the other benefits is that it gives other people permission to also open up and be honest with themselves. Have you ever noticed that when someone gives themselves permission to be vulnerable and allow themselves to experience the emotion or the feeling that's coming up, and then they actually share that with you? Do you not all of a sudden have a sense of feeling that it's okay for you to feel your emotions and for you to be honest with what's coming up for you as well?
Yeah, I think for me, when I notice other people being vulnerable or emotional, it kind of justifies my feelings. So if I am afraid of being honest and saying, hey, you know what, I don't like the way this is going, then when they share too, it makes me feel like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one, or I'm not the only one who's ever felt like this.
Awesome. One of the other benefits is that it allows other people to be compassionate with you. Imagine if you're never allowing yourself to be seen, if you're never allowing yourself to be vulnerable, if you never bring that wall down, you don't give other people an opportunity to feel compassionate towards you, to have some empathy, to give themselves permission to touch, tap into their heart and allow themselves to feel your own pain. So when I say that it gives other people permission to be compassionate, what do you think of?
Well, I guess it kind of goes back to all the other things that we're giving them permission to do. So I guess I would just say again that when I'm being compassionate, or when I notice somebody else being compassionate, it's kind of a relief, because I finally feel like somebody gets me, or they understand what it is I'm trying to say, or they are sympathetic or empathetic to the way I'm feeling.
Now, imagine this. So in my teen trainings, on the second day after we've gone through some amazing experiences where people trust each other, we start off that Sunday morning, or that second day in the morning, and we go through a very powerful catharsis where it's a safe place and a safe environment where everyone trusts each other, and they start to open up and share and reveal some of their pain and some of the resentment or the guilt that they have. And so it's a very powerful space. And all of a sudden, as some of these kids are sharing and they're having an experience, they're crying, they're getting emotional, they're getting nervous, their knees shaking, they start to tap it, where the voice cracks as they're sharing, and so all that starts to come up. It's amazing to watch the teenager to the right or the teenager to the left. All of a sudden, one of them grabs a tissue, hands it to the person next to him. All of a sudden, one of them trusts that spiritual part of them, and their hand goes up on their back, and they start comforting the person. They're rubbing their back, or maybe two girls will, one girl will reach over and grab the other girl's hand and hold their hand while they're sharing. All of a sudden, you start to watch all these youngsters that were walked in the training with all these walls up and being egotistical and not letting you see who they are, and all of a sudden you start to see the compassionate part of all these kids start to evolve. And to watch that happen in a room where these kids have shut down their emotions for 5, 8, 12 years, where they haven't been in an environment where they trusted themselves enough to be that compassionate person. And it's a weird, awkward silence, but if you trust that space and you give people permission to share like that, it allows the opportunity for all the other people around you to experience themselves as being a compassionate person. It gives them permission to feel that they care. It allows other people the opportunity to feel your pain, to know what it's like to be sympathetic for you, to have empathy for your suffering. So I want to open up that there's a bigger gift in this when we allow ourselves to be emotionally honest with what's coming up for us. It's like handing somebody a gift, saying, here, you can be compassionate with me. You can practice being compassionate with the person that you say you love the most. But if I got walls up and I'm not sharing that, I'm keeping that gift from you. I'm not allowing you to be that person for me.
Yeah, and going back again to what I had said earlier, it's kind of cool to see those teens kind of finally acknowledge that, oh wow, again, I'm not the only person that this happens to. And I think being a teenager, that's like one of the most important, I guess, realizations for someone to have, is that it's not just me. Like, if other people can get through this, I can get through this too.
That's right. In fact, one of the next benefits that I have written down is that it's a symbol for commonality. It's, oh wow, like you said, I'm not the only one going through this. And believe it or not, all teenagers at some point they've created a belief that they're the only one going through the struggles that they're going through. And I don't know how they come to this conclusion, but they in their mind, it's their own world, their own reality. They look out and see everyone else smiling, or putting on a fake smile, or pretending that life is so rosy and everything is going great for everyone, not realizing that secretly everyone is feeling pain. Everyone is sad. Everyone is depressed. Everyone goes through their ups and downs. So you being able to be honest with your feelings gives other people a commonality to go, oh wow, you feel like that too. Now it's kind of like we're part of a club. We're part of the same team. Where I didn't know that. I thought I was out there floating all by myself, and now I realize that we're both out there floating.
Yeah, one of the things I think why teens make up that whole I'm the only one thing is because nobody's honest, and nobody says, hey, you know what, I'm going through a really tough time right now, I just wanted to let you know, and then walks away. Everyone walks around smiling, and if they never see their parents go through anything, and they never see their parents cry or struggle to pay for something, or be upset because they don't have control over something, whatever it is teens get all worked up about, they don't see their parents doing that, and they don't see how their parents are handling it, because most parents want to keep it behind closed doors and handle it without their kids seeing them struggle.
That's right. And I think that that's one of the biggest aha moments that a conscious parent can have, is realizing that to try to keep putting on this facade that I got everything going on, and that I don't feel fear, and that I don't feel depressed or sad, or that I don't have any of those emotions, because that's what you're doing when you're not being emotionally honest, is you're putting on this facade, or you're pretending that you got everything dialed in, and your kids know that you don't. That's the crazy thing about it. Your kids can feel and sense that you don't have that. Your kids know when you're sad. They know when you're afraid. They can feel it. They can sense it. But yet they watch you play this game that you're not. They watch you pretend and hide. So guess what you're teaching your kids?
How to pretend and hide.
Yeah, how to hide their own emotions, how to stuff their own stuff. And so that's really what's going on there. And then here's one of the last benefits I wrote down. It helps us become more self-accepting. And it also helps us make better choices about how to spend our time and who to spend it with. And so those are the benefits I wrote down that I think that can, be created for you in your relationship, whether it's with your husband or your wife or your teenage son or daughter. The people that we care about most, they're yearning for us to be emotionally honest. And most of us aren't. And that's a sad thing, but if you can see the value of it, and you are yearning for a relationship to go to the next level, this might be one of those little keys that you actually have control over. Instead of you always yearning for your husband to be emotionally honest, how about taking a look at yourself and say, well, where am I holding back? Am I only 80% out of 100 being emotionally honest? And can I get in there and push myself to a 90 or 94? Or, how much more can I reveal of myself? And I guarantee you, if you're willing to go a little bit more deeper with being honest with what you're feeling, you'll give other people permission around you to also be a little bit more honest with their feeling.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I kind of wonder, because I can't really imagine very many parents sitting there thinking, okay, how could I be more, emotionally there for my kids, or honest for my kids? Because I think a lot of people, or do you, I guess I should ask you, do you think a lot of people are even putting their emotional intelligence to, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, to work? Because I know a lot of people. As a priority, you mean? Yeah, because people are working on their physical intelligence, their mental intelligence. Is their emotional intelligence even on their radar?
I don't think so. I think, very few people see the value of it, or they already classify themselves as emotionally healthy, or actually, it's a perfect way, a segue into answering the next question, which is what gets in the way. So let's talk about that. What gets in the way of you developing a higher sense of emotional intelligence, or how can I be more honest with my feelings? And so let's talk about the things that get in the way. And what I wrote down is that we're taught how to deal with our emotions. Or if we're not taught how to deal with it, we just, by default, we just practice dealing with our emotions rather than, or instead of simply learning how to just experience our emotions. Now, there's a distinction there. If you learn how and have been given permission to experience your experiences or feel what you're feeling, then all of a sudden you develop an emotional, healthy way. If you're not taught that, if you're told by either society or your family or your parents, hey, what are you crying for? Or what are you crying about? Or why are you crying? If you're spoken down to when you're feeling what you're feeling, you can very easily come up with a belief or create a belief that it's not okay for me to feel what I'm feeling. Or maybe I got to do it in silence, or maybe I shouldn't do it at all. So what gets in the way is that we're taught how to deal with it rather than just simply experiencing it. If we grow up in an environment where it's safe to just experience our experiences, we grow in a healthy way. But when we're talked down to, or when it's frowned upon, when we're feeling our feelings, then we slowly start to get into some of that dysfunction where we've created a way to either stuff it or hide it or ignore it, and that's the thing that gets in the way of us developing an emotional, healthy way.
Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of, we've talked about this before, the Mr. Fix-It theory from Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and I can see how in the book it was men like to fix things, and women are like, no, I don't want you to fix it, I just want to experience it and vent it to you. So I can kind of see how men especially are taught to deal with it. No crying, don't complain about it, just figure out what you're going to do and then kind of get over it.
Yeah, for me, being a Hispanic man, growing up in a Hispanic culture, I have a macho father and uncles, and you got that kind of family around you, and every time you cry, it's hey, toughen up, or what are you crying about, or hey, let's get moving on to fixing the problem. Or so it's very easy to create a belief that it's not okay to cry. Now, no one told me that. No one flat out said don't cry, or it's not okay to cry, or I don't want you to cry. But it was simply implied by that to me because I wasn't hyper aware of myself when I'm 5 years old. And
nobody really told you or welcomed you it's okay to cry.
That's right. Now, if I had parents or people around me that were evolved at a higher level that were teaching me, they could have, with the intention, with their words, to let me know, hey son, it's okay to cry, it's okay to feel sad. In fact, I want you to experience those experiences. And then if I had an example of what that looked like from a father or from an uncle or a mentor that gave themselves permission to feel that whenever they're experiencing their experiences, then that was more evidence that I get to be that, and it's okay to be that, and it's okay to feel those feelings. But growing up in that kind of environment, it just taught me that it's not okay to cry, it's not okay to feel those feelings, so I just stuffed them.
Another thing is, I think kids are always being taught. They only know what not to do. So we're so used to, I'm going to do anything until I'm told not to do it. So I think if you kind of, and this is just a theory I just made up 5 seconds ago, but if you could, as a parent, start teaching your kids what to do or how to be instead of what not to do and what not to be, they won't focus on that so much. They'll now know what is okay, and anything else is either questionable or not okay.
What a great point. When it comes to conscious parenting, you want to focus on what it is that you want them to focus on developing in a healthy way, rather than telling them not to do this, because like you said, when you focus on what not to do, you're basically having them focus on what not to do, and that's not a healthy thing to do.
Yeah, and we're gonna take a break, but when we come back, we'll get back to what gets in the way of us expressing ourselves emotionally.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned for more of My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.